I found out my wife had been talking to her ex for over a year. My wife and I have been together for 8 years and married for this June. She was with her ex for 7 years. They broke up 2 years before we started dating. We're both in our early 30s, and honestly, married life has been lovely. We've had some dry spells, but overall, our intimate life is good. We're both emotionally committed. About 6 months ago, we were driving, and she mentioned her ex had contacted her by text. She explained that her work friend accidentally called him on her phone she had borrowed to make a call. It sounded odd, but I didn't dwell on it, as it didn't seem like something you'd make up. She shrugged it off, saying they'd just exchanged a few catch-up messages. For context, they hadn't stayed friends after the breakup, as he was still in love with her, making friendship impossible. Fast forward to about 4 weeks ago, we were driving, and she left her phone in the car, and she went into a store. I'm not the jealous type. I saw his name pop up on her notifications, which raised some alarms. Still, I trusted her completely, so I ignored it. 2 weeks went by, and I noticed her texting more than usual, sometimes even tilting the screen away from me. My anxiety grew, and eventually, I confronted her about it, asking if she was in touch with her ex. She openly admitted they kept in touch since his initial text, and that they just exchanged occasional updates. She offered to stop messaging him if I was uncomfortable. I trusted her, truly believed it was innocent, still felt hurt. I didn't ask to see the text to avoid crossing a line that could affect our future relationship. We agreed she could keep messaging him as long as she didn't hide it. The next night in bed, around midnight, I noticed her texting again. My stomach sank, and I asked who she was talking to. She said it was her ex, sharing some details about our day. I let it go, feeling confused and needing time to process. The following afternoon, we discussed it again and agreed that this was becoming a problem. So she decided to message him, telling him they shouldn't talk anymore. But during the texts, I persuaded her to keep in touch and even suggested that his girlfriend could talk to me to confirm it was innocent. It felt strange, and I started to get angry. I thought our earlier conversations would have shown her my discomfort and that she would make that choice herself for the sake of our relationship. I told her it was her decision, but that backfired when she said she'd keep talking to him, assuring me it was only because she didn't have many friends. We had recently moved to a new state and, due to the pandemic, hadn't made many connections, so I understood her perspective. This continued for 2 days until I couldn't handle it anymore. I'm not an emotional person, but my moral compass was on high alert. We sat down, and I explained that we needed boundaries and that talking to an ex they weren't friends with was a line we shouldn't cross. She was upset but agreed and wanted to prioritize us, so she messaged him, saying they shouldn't talk and block him. I appreciated her responsiveness, though she seemed hurt. Stupidly, I then started reading online threads about red flags and almost kicked myself not realizing it sooner. This led me to check our phone usage records. What I found nearly gave me a panic attack. The text records showed this had been going on for a year, almost daily, with 10 to 40 messages, images, and texts, often late into the night while I was asleep. My heart sank as I realized that, at the very least, she'd been emotionally unfaithful. Based on the records, I wrote down a few questions. When did it start? How often did you text? Did you meet up with him when you visited your family? He lives in her hometown. I asked her to sit down and explain that I had questions and wanted her to be brutally honest. She looked confused but agreed. When I asked, she said she didn't remember how long it had been. Thought it was months and said maybe every few days, but she denied seeing him in person. I knew she was lying. So I presented the timeline and data showing the frequency and volume of messages. She admitted she couldn't recall exact details, saying they felt like innocent exchanges, sharing dog pictures and discussing our activities. There was no flirting or deeply personal content. At this point, we were both very emotional, and I was close to breaking down while she cried uncontrollably. She offered to let me check the messages. She had switched phones 2 weeks earlier. She retrieved her old phone, charged it, and handed it to me, then went to our bedroom, still crying. I felt nauseous, unsure of what I would find. I scrolled through the messages quickly, looking for anything flirty or suggestive. There was nothing out of the ordinary, just dog pictures at 2 a.m., casual chats. It was a mix of confusion, sadness, and relief. Now, the texts were more personal, discussing our relationship and plans, but I didn't want to invade her privacy too much and felt betrayed, yet intruding. My pain came from the deception of hiding this from me for a year, but I also reminded myself that I loved her and still trusted her. We talked, cried, discussed boundaries, and how to move forward. Strangely, over the next few weeks, we grew closer than ever, emotionally and physically. It felt like we'd realized how much we loved each other and became grateful for our life together. I'm still hurt and sometimes bring it up, sharing my thoughts with her. My mind now searches for red flags, as I can't believe I missed this for a year. She took full responsibility, apologized, and assured me it wouldn't happen again. While I'm hurt, part of me feels guilty for asking her to stop talking to him. Not because of who he is, but because I know how important friendships are for a healthy relationship. I was never jealous before, but now I have lingering doubts I can't shake. Any advice on overcoming this would be appreciated. I really don't want to change and become possessive.
No matter what anyone says, if you feel uncomfortable and it's a boundary you don't want your partner to cross, and it's a rational boundary, don't let anyone gaslight you with controlling, insecure, or "I'm friends with my ex." 2. There's a difference between being friendly and sending the occasional message. But daily messaging is a big no-no. Exes share past history and emotions, and keeping them in the background can easily harm the main relationship. I don't know how you'll explain it to her, but hopefully with patience and calm, she'll realize it's wrong. If she continues, you may have to end the relationship. Good luck.
For the last year, you essentially played the role of the third wheel in your own relationship. Most of her thoughts were on him, waiting for you to fall asleep so she could talk to him, sending him pictures. I mean, your relationship was basically on hold for the past year. Even though they broke up a long time ago, she clearly hasn't gotten over him. She misses him, thinks about him. Good luck, OP, but be cautious because you might be fighting a losing battle. To have any chance, you may need to change who you are and what you tolerate. Can you be the guy who's firm with his boundaries and decisions, even if it risks seeming controlling? I hope so.
AITA for being upset with my wife for inviting her ex to my birthday party without even asking me. I'm 29 and my wife is 30. We've been together for 5 years. We met at a seminar, got along well, started dating, and eventually got married. My wife had already told me she had been in a very serious relationship with a friend from school who was also the brother of one of her friends. They were planning to get married, but she doesn't love him anymore, and they broke up when he went to study and work abroad. I haven't seen him in 9 years. Enough backstory. 5 days ago was my birthday, and we wanted to do something special, so we planned it for a month. We were on a tight budget, so we discussed who we'd invite and basically agreed that we'd invite our families, even extended ones, and a few neighbors, friends, and colleagues, but only the ones we really know. On the day, I had no idea my wife had also invited her ex, which was a shock when I saw him. I was really taken aback. I called my wife upstairs and asked her what he was doing there. She said he came with her sister. I told her we'd talk about it later. At the party, I saw him hugging my wife and he greeted me and hugged me too. We only spoke out of formality, and my wife was spending time with her friends, and he joined them too, probably because he's part of that friend group. Anyway, after the party, I confronted my wife and asked her what she was thinking. She asked what I meant. I asked why her ex was there when I'd never met him before, and why she didn't tell me. She said he'd come back for a few months on vacation, and her friend had told her and asked her to invite him. I told my wife she should have discussed it with me. It was my birthday party, and I should have the right to decide who's there. It's not just anyone, it's her ex. She said it wasn't a big deal. It was just for a few hours, and she didn't tell me because I'd object since she knows me and wanted to invite all her friends. I completely lost it when she said that. I said, "So you chose your friends over your own husband?" I asked her if she had any idea how it feels to see your partner's ex at your special event, especially for the first time. Would she like it if I invited my ex to her birthday without telling her, and my ex was hugging and laughing with me? Would she be okay? This was supposed to be my special day, and she ruined it by inviting her ex. I kept thinking about how he had been with her for years, and God knows what they really did together. Would I be happy to see a man who'd been with my own wife on my special day? It would be different if we were on friendly terms and knew each other. She started sobbing and said I was overreacting, that it wasn't such a big deal, and I was hurting her with my words. We haven't spoken in a few days. She told her parents and sister, and they say I'm overreacting and it's not a big deal. I just told them if I invited one of my exes to her birthday without telling her, would she like it? They said I'd just be trying to get back at her. I said I wouldn't hurt her intentionally, but she should have thought it over more carefully and realized that it could hurt me. Update. First, I appreciate everyone's advice. I tried my best not to overthink things, but after reading the comments, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I really tried to deny it, but I just couldn't. I went to my wife today and asked her to unlock her phone and give it to me. She started asking me all kinds of questions, like if I didn't trust her, or if I was going crazy with jealousy, and so on. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I felt. After pushing her for a while, she gave me her phone. I checked her text and social media messages but didn't find anything. Then, I went to her group chat and discovered that my wife and her ex had been meeting up alone often since he came back, and he'd also been invited whenever she went out with her friends, but she never told me any of this. I asked her what this was all about. She replied, "What?" I asked why she was meeting him alone, and why she never told me. Why didn't she tell me that she and her friends were inviting her ex out? She said it wasn't what I thought. She said he wasn't just her ex, but a longtime friend, someone she's known for years, even before she met me, and that I'm just being a jealous, controlling man and that there's nothing suspicious going on. They were simply meeting up and hanging out. I told her that I love her and trust her, but I'm not a fool. There's no reason for her to meet her ex alone, especially behind my back. I don't even know who this guy is, who he really is, and why he's meeting my wife behind my back, and why is she defending him. I told her that I'm leaving and that we're getting a divorce. My wife started crying and said I didn't trust her and that it wasn't what I thought. I wanted to comfort her, but I walked to the door. She held on to me and got upset, saying we could talk it over and clear up the misunderstanding, but I said I wasn't ready to talk and was running out of patience. I told her to just leave me alone, and if she wanted to be with him, I wouldn't stop her. I'd pray for a happy life for her. I went to live with my sister and told her everything that had happened. I must have gone on for a long time, but she just listened without saying a word. In the end, she said my wife was definitely hiding something, and that my suspicions were correct. She hugged me and comforted me, and I think she could tell I was drowning in my own thoughts. My sister said she could feel that I wanted to cry and that I could cry on her shoulder and get it all out instead of bottling everything up. Then, she even started crying herself. Honestly, I really feel it, but I'm too proud to show my weakest side, so here I am, sharing anonymously online. I did a lot for my wife. She always threw lavish parties, but when I finally wanted to do the same after years, she betrayed me in the worst possible way. There were 1,000 other ways she could have hurt me, but she chose the worst one. So here I am, drinking and thinking about where things went wrong, wondering where I fell short, and living with my sister like a loser in my 30s. Update 2. Yesterday, my wife called and asked to meet up. I said no and told her to say whatever she wanted over the phone. She couldn't have chosen a worse time to call and bother me. I was drunk and crying my eyes out, but I don't blame her since it was only 11 a.m. She started by saying she was sorry and would do anything to win me back. She swore she hadn't talked to him until he came back and her friends reintroduced him to her, which led to them reminiscing. She suggested we should get back together and fix our marriage, and she promised never to talk to him again. She even proposed that we should move to another state, live our lives, and forget what happened. At that point, I really just wanted to forgive her, divorce her, and avoid exposing her, but that irritated me so much that I started calling her all sorts of names. I let everything out that I'd been holding in. I called her a liar, a cheater, a manipulator, a expletive. I reminded her of all I had done for her, that I sacrificed so much for her, and yet she was meeting up with her ex behind my back, taking advantage of me just because I loved her. I swore to God that even if I went bankrupt or ended up begging on the streets, I'd expose her and divorce her. If it were anything else, I would have forgiven her in a heartbeat, but she was spending time with her ex-fiancé while I worked to support her, giving her most of my income. What made her think I was such a fool? I hung up on her mid-rant and she was crying. But who's the fool here, me or her? Right after that, I told everyone what was happening, which is very embarrassing for her. I shared what I'd seen in the texts, and many of her family members, especially her cousins, called me, promising to support me. They said they were as shocked as I was when they saw him and could see it on my face, but didn't say anything, though they promised to help me. Except for her mother, she's even worse. She started saying in our family chat that I'm lying, that I'm jealous, and that I'm ruining her daughter's life, and so much more. Her dad called me, saying he was sorry and knew I wasn't lying, and that he was disappointed in the way my mother-in-law and wife were acting. But he said he had to stand by the family, so he'd stay neutral and wouldn't help me legally. I told him I understood. My sister hugged me when I told her what I'd said. She held me for what felt like 10 hours, crying and saying she'd failed as a sister, that she should have done a background check on my wife instead of just trusting her, and she kept kissing my forehead. I told her it wasn't her fault. She told me that next time, she'd find a really good woman for me, introduce me to one of her friends, and that women would line up for me because of how good of a man I am. Even after all the pain, I still wanted to defend my wife, which she said was rare. I don't know if that's true or if she was just trying to comfort me, but dating or marrying again is the last thing on my mind right now. I'm just grateful my sister is here, helping me, otherwise, I wouldn't be writing this. My sister told me she'd already spoken with a very good lawyer, who's a friend of hers. She hadn't told me earlier because she knew I wasn't in the right state of mind. She explained that in our country, there's a mandatory 1-year waiting period and required counseling at least twice a month, and if I don't attend, the judge might think I'm irrational. And since I have no proof of an affair, the divorce might take years, even a decade, and even if we prove infidelity, she'd still get alimony because cheating doesn't revoke her right to spousal support here, which made me even angrier. But what makes me happy is that my sister said her friend found a loophole. She'd charge us a very high fee, considering how many months or years this might take, but she'd later return the money or help financially if we needed it. I'm so grateful to have a sister who loves me so much and is so smart, surrounding herself with people like her. But the pain I feel isn't going away and will stay with me for a long time. And the worst part about drinking is that even if you drink all day, you keep overthinking unless you drink until you pass out. Edit. Thank you all for your support and time. I'm very grateful for your kind words, and I hope none of you ever go through what I did. I wish you all the best. I'll focus on myself now, get some sleep, stop drinking, and think about my future. But as happy as I am to receive support from hundreds of strangers, it makes me wonder why the one woman I wanted to spend my life with couldn't support me and ended up betraying me. I'll come back here to read your words for comfort whenever I need to, and I'll update once my divorce is finalized, though it might take years. I also read someone mentioning an emotional affair, and even if that's all it is, I can't tolerate it, nor do I have proof to be sure. But meeting her ex alone or with her friends, while hiding everything from me, only makes me think she still loves her ex-fiancé. Otherwise, she wouldn't keep this from me. No one should tolerate an emotional affair. There's no justice, whether you're a man or a woman. I thought this was just a stereotype, but now I understand why my country is hated for a reason. Good luck to all, and I truly appreciate each one of you.